The rising sun painted the sky in pink and orange, announcing the arrival of a day that Isabella knew would be the most important of her life. At 28, she stood in front of the mirror, her delicate fingers adjusting the veil over her wavy brown hair, with a nervous smile on her face. Her mother and her younger sister, Sophia, were putting the final touches on the wedding dress, but the sparkle in Isabella's eyes was uncontrollable, as if she could hardly believe that this moment had finally arrived. The nervousness was palpable, but it wasn't the type of anxiety that paralyzed her. It was a vibrant expectation, like an energy that made her heart beat strongly, faster with each passing minute. She looked at her reflection, dressed in white, and felt the emotion overflow. It wasn't just the wedding. It was the realization of a dream that had accompanied her since she was a little girl. Isabella had always imagined that moment with unique clarity, as if she had rehearsed every step, every smile, every look. The church aisle, the sound of the wedding march, Matthew waiting for her at the altar. Everything was about to happen. 3 years of dating, 6 months of engagement, and now, the promise of a life alongside Matthew. Isabella thought about the adventures that would come, the joys of building a life together, and the family they would form. Emotion mixed with happiness, a happiness so pure and intense that she could hardly believe she was about to live it. The day was just beginning, and she had no idea what was about to happen hours later. The chapel was beautifully decorated with white flowers and aromatic candles that perfumed the air. The guests were already beginning to arrive, filling the place with murmurs of expectation and joy. Isabella could hear the muffled sound of voices through the door of the room where she was getting ready. "Are you ready, dear?" her mother asked, her eyes brimming with emotion. Isabella took a deep breath, looked at herself one last time in the mirror, and nodded. "I'm ready, Mom." She walked to the entrance of the chapel, her heart racing with each step. The doors were closed, and she could feel the presence of all the guests on the other side, waiting for her grand entrance. Her father was already by her side, ready to escort her down the aisle. It was at that moment that Sophia appeared, running and breathless, with a look of panic on her face. "Isabella! Isabella!" she called out, almost out of breath. Isabella turned, feeling a tightness in her chest. Something in her intuition told her that something was wrong. "What is it, Sophia?" He's not there," Sophia said, the words coming out in fragments. "Matthew hasn't shown up. No one knows where he is." Isabella's world collapsed in that instant. Her sister's words echoed in her mind, but she couldn't believe what she was hearing. How could Matthew not have shown up? This couldn't be happening. "Are you sure?" Isabella asked, her voice trembling. "Maybe he's just late." Sophia shook her head, her eyes filled with tears. "We've checked everywhere. He's not at home, he's not answering his phone. No one can get in touch with him." Reality began to settle like a crushing weight on Isabella's shoulders. She looked to her father, her mother, Sophia, searching for some sign that this was just a terrible mistake. But all she saw was the confirmation of her worst nightmare. The chapel doors opened, and the guests' eyes turned towards her. Isabella felt as if she were on a stage, exposed and vulnerable. The ensuing silence was deafening. She could see the confusion and pity in the eyes of people who should have been celebrating her happiness. Unable to bear the situation for another second, Isabella turned and ran. She ran away from the chapel, away from the looks, away from everything that represented her shattered dream. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out, until she finally collapsed on a park bench, alone and desolate. The hours that followed passed in a blur. Isabella wandered the city streets, still dressed as a bride, unable to fully process what had happened. People stared, some with curiosity, others with compassion, but she barely noticed. Her mind was filled with unanswered questions, broken promises, and shattered dreams. When she finally returned home, it was already night. Her family was there, concerned and trying to comfort her, but Isabella felt numb. She locked herself in her room, took off the wedding dress, and threw it in a corner. Lying on her bed, the tears finally came, in uncontrollable waves of pain and disappointment. The days that followed were a test of endurance for Isabella. She refused to leave the house, ignoring messages and calls from worried friends. The pain of rejection and abandonment was like an open wound that refused to heal. Matthew had completely disappeared without leaving any explanation, further increasing Isabella's confusion and suffering. It was during a sleepless night about 2 weeks after the wedding disaster that Isabella made a radical decision. She could not continue living like this, trapped in memories and pain. She needed a drastic change, something that would pull her out of that endless loop of sadness and self-pity. With trembling hands, she turned on her laptop and began to search. Plane tickets, exotic destinations, places she had always dreamed of visiting. The idea began to take shape in her mind. She would sell the apartment she had bought with so much effort, take her savings, and embark on a journey around the world. Isabella's decision took her family by surprise. Her mother tried to dissuade her, arguing that it was a hasty decision, that she needed time to heal. But Isabella was determined. She knew that staying there, surrounded by memories and pitying looks, would only prolong her suffering. "I need to do this, Mom," Isabella explained, holding her mother's hands. "I need to find myself again, to discover who I am outside of this relationship, outside of this life I had planned." Reluctantly, her family accepted her decision. In the weeks that followed, Isabella dedicated herself to preparing for her trip. She sold her apartment, organized her finances, and began planning her itinerary. With each step taken towards this new adventure, she felt a bit of the weight in her chest dissipate. On the eve of her departure, Isabella created a profile on a social network dedicated to travelers. Her initial intention was just to share photos and keep in touch with family, but something drove her to write a longer post, describing the events that led her to this journey. "Today I'm about to embark on the greatest adventure of my life," she wrote. "It's not the adventure I had planned, but perhaps it's exactly the one I need. I was left at the altar. My heart was broken into 1,000 pieces, but I am determined to rebuild it, piece by piece, in every place I visit, in every person I meet." To her surprise, the post received a wave of support and encouraging messages from strangers from all over the world. People shared their own stories of overcoming challenges, offered travel tips, and words of comfort. Isabella was touched by this unexpected display of solidarity. With a backpack on her shoulders and a heart full of expectations and a bit of fear, Isabella boarded her first flight. Her initial destination was a small island in Southeast Asia, known for its paradisiacal beaches and ancient temples. Upon stepping onto that unfamiliar land, breathing the warm and humid air, Isabella felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The first few days were a challenge. Loneliness sometimes weighed heavily, and there were moments when she questioned her decision. But gradually, Isabella began to open herself to the experiences that surrounded her. She sampled exotic foods, talked with local residents, visited temples, and allowed herself to get lost in the city's narrow, colourful streets. With each new experience, Isabella shared her impressions on her social network. Her posts were a mix of vivid descriptions of the places she visited and profound reflections on her personal journey. She wrote about the peace she found, about the lessons of simplicity she learned from the locals, about how each new dawn brought with it the promise of healing and renewal. Today, sitting on the edge of a deserted beach watching the sunset, "I realize that life is much greater than our expectations," she wrote in one of her most popular posts. "There is so much beauty in the world, so many stories to be discovered. My heart still hurts. But now I understand that this pain brought me here, opened my eyes to possibilities I would never have imagined." As Isabella traveled from one country to another, her follower base grew. People from all over the world connected with her honesty, her vulnerability, and her ability to find beauty even in the most difficult moments. Her stories about the cultures she encountered, the friendships she made, and the lessons she learned touched the hearts of many. It was during her stay in a small coastal town in Europe that Isabella received a message that would change the course of her life. It was from a man named Gabriel, who introduced himself as the director of a major publishing house. He had followed Isabella's journey through her posts and believed she had a unique story to tell. "Your writings have a special quality," Gabriel wrote. "You have a gift for capturing the essence of human experiences and transforming them into words that touch the soul. Have you ever considered writing a book?" She worked at a publishing house, but it was in the marketing department, and the idea of writing a book had never crossed her mind. She always enjoyed writing, but never imagined she could make a career out of it. However, the more she thought about it, the more the idea excited her. She had so many stories to tell, so many reflections to share. With Gabriel's support, Isabella began working on her first book. Her travels gained a new purpose. Every place visited, every person met, and every experience lived became inspirations for her writing. She wrote in seaside cafes, moving trains, and hotel rooms with breathtaking views. Revisiting her memories and translating them into words was therapeutic. The pain of being abandoned at the altar still existed, but now it was just a chapter in a larger story of growth and rebirth. When the book was finished, Isabella could hardly believe it. Her pain had been transformed into something beautiful, capable of inspiring others. The launch was a success, and readers connected with her honesty and her message of hope. Success opened new doors: lectures, interviews, and collaborations with renowned magazines. Her voice, which had started timidly in a travel blog, now reached millions. Isabella continued traveling, not just to heal wounds, but to listen to and share human stories that united cultures and transcended differences. Over time, Isabella published other books and built a life rich with true friendships and achievements. Her family, once fearful of her uncertain journey, could not have been prouder. It was during a lecture in a university town that destiny had another surprise in store for Isabella. Among the crowd waiting to have their book signed was a man named Lucas. He waited patiently in line, and when his turn finally came, his eyes met Isabella's, and something unexplainable happened. Lucas was not just another fan. He was a literature teacher who had been deeply touched by Isabella's writings. They started talking and discovered that they shared not only a love for literature, but also a similar worldview and outlook on life. In the months that followed, Isabella and Lucas kept in touch. He accompanied her on some of her travels, and she visited him in his hometown. Slowly, a feeling began to blossom between them, something Isabella never imagined she would feel again. With Lucas, Isabella found something she never had with Matthew: a true connection, based on mutual understanding and respect. Lucas admired her not just for her beauty or success, but for who she was, for her strength, vulnerability, and her ability to transform experiences into words that touched people. After years of traveling without a fixed home, Isabella started to feel the desire to put down roots. Together with Lucas, she found a house in the countryside, a peaceful place where she could write and recharge her energies between travels. It was a simple house, but full of light and surrounded by nature. Sitting on the porch of her new house, watching the sunset with Lucas by her side, Isabella reflected on the incredible journey that life had taken her on. The abandonment at the altar, which once seemed like the end of her dreams, had actually been the beginning of an extraordinary adventure. She realized that happiness wasn't in the expectations she had for the future, but in the choices she made along the way. Every challenge, every moment of pain, every new experience had shaped her, transforming her into the person she was today. With Lucas, Isabella finally understood that true love wasn't an endless pursuit or a romantic fantasy. It was a peaceful arrival, a meeting of souls that recognize and accept each other completely. It was the freedom to be herself with all her complexities and imperfections, and to be loved exactly as she was. Isabella learned that life doesn't always follow the script we plan, but often takes us exactly where we need to be. Her broken heart at the altar had transformed into a heart open to the world, full of stories, experiences, and a deeper and truer love than she ever imagined possible. And above all, she felt gratitude for having found the courage to transform her pain into something beautiful and meaningful. And so, with Lucas's hand in hers and a new book beginning to take shape in her mind, Isabella embraced the future, ready for any adventure that life might have in store for her. She now knew that no matter what happened, she would always have the strength to transform her experiences into words that could touch and inspire others. And in this realization, Isabella found her true happiness and her purpose in life. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.